see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I never knew. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
I did say when
Donald
I was
Trump,
Secretary of State
Hillary
3
Clinton.
years ago that I
How
hoped
did
it
we
would
come
be the
to
gold
these two
standard.
options?
It
I
was
don't
just
know.
finally
Neither do my
negotiated
friends.
last
Oh
week.
well, the point
And
is that the
looking
two
at it,
options
it didn't
alone
meet my
are enough to
standards.
start off a brutal civil war that will leave plenty of suicides, violent protests among ethnic and different age groups, and a whole lot of media orchestrated shouting. When Clinton wins, it's fair to say that the Trump people, and surely some of the Bernie bros, will come to seize the day burning things, vandalizing property, and calling people...
Clinton, is Bernie Sanders tough enough on guns?
Well, I can't say it because that's a lot of swearing. When
Do you
Trump
believe in a
wins, it's
punishment
fair to
for
say that
abortion?
there'll
Yes or
surely
no?
be
As a
bomb
principle.
threats,
The
throat
answer
slings, racial
is
slurs
that
shouted about,
there has to be some
this
form of
and this
punishment.
and that, and a good old WWE staged
Tell me
orchestration.
why.
Whichever way you look at it, everyone loses, and America will be laughed worldwide for its standalone nonsense. Not for Thomas Edison, not for Hollywood, no, for two unpopular candidates. 2016, I'm sorry to say this, but there's a hashtag that belongs to
I don't
you.
know. I don't think
Worst
Ivanka would do that
election
inside the
ever.
magazine, although she does have a very nice figure. I've said that if Ivanka weren't my daughter, perhaps I'd be dating her.
In pertaining to how me being a British American voting in this election has to do with anything, well, has to do with a great deal with the way how strange politics, but how familiar things are in the USA as they are in the UK. For instance, immigration. It's fair to say that this is the biggest hot-button topic in the past 5 years. We have never heard this much about unfettered immigration since the 1970s, when Enoch Powell used dog whistle tactics to state that Britain was changing rapidly into a multicultural PC society. Donald Trump will continue on to deal with this issue in his own hands. Personally, for me, bashing at immigrants all the time can be repetitive, but acknowledging mass immigration can affect working class jobs is a reality. It's a two-folded dilemma.
Land is my land, from California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me.
With immigration comes the fear that corporatist free trade agreements imposed by centralized banks and Jewish cronies will affect jobs for everyone under the guise that everyone's trying to compete for jobs will have to do with the countries that lack strong labor laws and offer piss-poor wages. given how both parties, particularly Bernie Sanders' movement, was in the Democratic Party, and Donald Trump's populist rhetoric, it'll mean both of them must adapt or die if they want to win the voters of the increasingly working class and poor public.
They got criminal records or what.
Neighbor Terry Mockney Sr. lives just down the road and says he and his wife fear for their safety.
Race and religious tensions seem to be even worse than ever before, with recent shootings at unarmed black men and shootings directed at police officers, for example, and all those who shot and blown up the peace in France, Germany and Belgium via jihadi Muslims are sure to divide and create a war mentality amongst everyone. Everyone is feeling the pain and the bruises. Not surprising one bit. Many people blame the rise of white nationalism against the first black president. Also, many people blame on the rise of multiculturalism and mass immigration.
We will leave this courthouse.
You said something offensive? Something that might offend? Women, religious, and ethnic minorities. Oh dear, we must send you to prison. For the most part, political correctness has become a very strong issue in its own way, more or less a debate between those who feel that saying something offensive promotes right-wing conservative values, and those who feel that silencing someone saying something controversial is against free speech, and they're not wrong.
People are getting a little crazy with having to worry about every little word they say and whether it's actually politically correct or not.
In England, where certain comedians are being pulled up on political correctness, where I think you've just got to realise, especially with comedy, just loosen up. You know, everyone's going to be offended by something. And I just think there's always going to be someone who will look for something to complain about.
Chris Christie from New Jersey, close here, that speaks his mind regardless of what the consequences are versus always being worried what people are going to think, what the poll numbers show.
So you'd rather be offended and at least have the truth?
Yes, very much.
It's an issue that I believe unites both people of the left and the right, making sure that people who fought in the wars and the armed services aren't left behind or forgotten for something silly.
Here you go.
Thanks again. Thank you for your service.
Thank you for your support.
Because anyone who has
both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton haven't said much to help Julian Assange or Ed Snowden gain asylum or exile without criminal charges. It only leaves people from the libertarian faction and the hard left to support them as some sort of thought criminal or political prisoner.
It can literally take less than a second for a computer to go through the possibilities and pull that password out.
You rate Cumberbatch's accent?
Well, you know, we're all used to foreign actors trying to do Australian accents, and it's so grating on the ear. When you hear someone trying to do, a Brit trying to do an Australian accent and your own accent, I can't tell you how great.
This may not be a very strong decision, but it is something that irks me for some reason. Alex Jones has decided to support Donald Trump's campaign despite his previous status as a conspiracy theorist against the system with libertarian-leaning beliefs. When it comes to Bernie Sanders, I'm surprised to see him endorse Hillary Clinton, despite his popularity among the harder left-wing voter base. To me, they seem hypocrites and somehow opportunists because they believe third parties are spoiler candidates when they aren't.
And on drugs, though. She's gonna be...
And why she must become.
Humanity's going to come together. Ah! Ah!
Our next president.
Ah! Ah! I have the government documents where they said they're going to encourage homosexuality with chemicals so that people don't have children. I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay. Ah! Ah!
I have come here to make it as clear as possible as to why I am endorsing Hillary Clinton.
Ah! Ah!
I will not let you down.
Ah! Ah!
Many have said they'll move to Canada in response to having a president they don't like winning and running for office. Most of you left-wingers will say this, but there are some on the right who have claimed the same thing. How should I know? Someone back in 2012, who I knew she was a Republican, she said the same thing. While Canada is certainly a very good country with a strong economy and egalitarianism, they are a bit more strict on immigration than the US. Similar to Australia, we pay somewhat higher taxes and a VAT, have a points-based system, and try to get in. Trump or Clinton winning might not guarantee citizenship overnight. It's a lot of paperwork and costs money. Something millennials don't have.
Without an accent. Lead one to believe Canadians love leaves. I don't know why there is a leaf on the Canadian flag or how that happened. Canada has universal health care. Canadians love hockey and they eat poutine. And you make a special breed of chick that's like a sassy French brought in an Indian. So they got the eyes like this and then the big lips. Oh my God, I'm telling you. It's so cold over here that when you meet someone from, say, Winnipeg, you just go like this. It's like seeing a war vet.
We will not Taking someone's guns is a controversial thing indeed. The U.S. Constitution protects the Second Amendment. Understandable, even if recent attacks are sporadically occurring throughout the country, with people shooting at police in schools and universities and all, is surely scaring some people off. In this case, the Second Amendment is seen by both the far right and the far left, and their respective anti-establishment branches of libertarianism and anarchism as a means to fight against tyranny.
I don't have statistics.
So would reinstating the assault weapons ban help to bring down the violent crime?
I think reinstating the assault weapon ban would certainly help.
You say you're leaving for Canada if your candidate is defeated? Jim Gaffigan has some thoughts about that.
I'm moving to Canada.
Essentially a vote for the masses, Brexit was a vote enacted 23rd of June 2016 as an outcry against the red tape imposed by the shadow government of the EU, mass unfiltered immigration, and national pride. The main puppets behind the movement for the British independence originated mainly through the eyes of Nigel Farage of UKIP. After official results came through, 78% or so of the eligible British voting public came to the ballot box for the referendum. 51% voted to leave, which mainly consisted of Tories and UKIPers, while 48% voted to remain, which mainly consisted of Labour, Liberal Democrat, and supporters of regional parties like Plaid Cymru and Scottish National Party (SNP). While the media and internet comment sections made it seem like it was a godsend, it didn't seem to be quite the case, with stock prices falling the day after the vote, and a radical devaluation of the pound sterling not seen since 1985 added to the injury. There were reports of racial and religious crimes and uncertainty amongst the electorate, as many people googled the day after, "What is the EU?" and the like. Even with Brexit holding good intentions, Brexit is a sign that we'll be seeing a wave of conservative populism to come, when the main emphasis for its approval was the fear of mass, unfiltered immigration.
You have the charisma of a damp rag and the appearance of a low-grade bank clerk. And the question that I want to
While some might not admit that, it is fair to say that the issue alone, amidst disturbing great waves occurring in Cologne, Germany, Sweden, and attacks in France by jihadi Muslims, were both the driving impetuses.
Who voted for you? And what mechanism? Oh, I know democracy's not popular with you lot.
There's nothing quite like seeing two powerful buddies at a high-end bar drinking martinis while watching the world burn as they play a real-life game of the famous board game Risk. Tony Blair, Bill Clinton, and George W. Bush were the best of pals. Even David Cameron and Barack Obama are the best of pals. Most of this is just a photo op to appease the globalists, said me and Alex Jones. Anyways, I'm sure some seek to benefit one another for the good of everyone, but doing it through Bilderberg means G20 and G8 summits, UN conferences and peace talks, yada 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 yada. We've heard it all before, but the main point of discussing a special relationship has to do with how this may break or strengthen depending on who we vote for. It's fair to say that Donald Trump will leave some people arguing, bickering, within the political community, but will surely make allies along with the conservative populist leaders in the Netherlands, like Geert Wilders, in the UK, Nigel Farage, Italy, Matteo Salvini, and France, Marine Le Pen. If Hillary Clinton wins, it's fair to say that there might be less tensions. I don't think she'll be threatened too much by Theresa May, but she may feel like an outsider considering how unpopular Angela Merkel from Germany is and centrist politicians are.
The peoples of Europe have to remove you. Is this European democracy? Well, I sense.
Nigel Farage is essentially the British version of Donald Trump, someone who's very popular amongst the constituency of voters as largely working class, white males, not entirely university or college bound. Jeremy Corbyn is the British version of Bernie Sanders, someone on the other hand who represents the left-wing spectrum of voters who are largely under 30 and prone to student activism. Both Farage and Trump, Corbyn and Sanders supporters are very vocal and unwilling to compromise, from what I am understanding, in an effort to fulfill a utopia that to regular non-committed voters might be viewed as fulfilling, on the one hand, a right-wing fascist wonderland, if you're a Corbynista, Sandinista, or a hippie communist commune if you're a Trumpy or Farage. This rise of populist support is a manifestation of a global recession that affected millions worldwide back in 2008, and the effects of a post-industrial economy and society marked by neoliberalism or political correctness is what they're both crying against these perceived injustices. What makes me scratch my head, though, is about their respective comparisons is Sanders' willingness to support Hillary Clinton for president, because he thinks that she can win the presidency, despite her track record of being a fake progressive, compared to the more progressive, socialist-minded Jill Stein. This isn't novel, however. Support Democrats through recent years before because he believes third parties are spoilers. Donald Trump, on the other hand, is a more interesting character, previously belonging as a centrist capitalist with some left-wing opinions prior to 2009. He even ran for the Reform Party in 2000 against Pat Buchanan, but lost to him only to comment about Buchanan, by the way, having Nazi tendencies, which the Nazi accusation is now something that people criticize him for. As of now. Also, he once supported Hillary Clinton's run for office in 2008 peculiarly, and took photos with her and her husband, Bill. He also endorsed Mitt Romney for president over the Constitution Party back in 2012. Needless to say, the American anti-establishment candidates aren't so anti-establishment as they may seem, which renders both Farage and Corbyn more honest to God, despite their previous, and for the latter, linkings with the two major parties of Britain, the Tories and Labour.
Or 0 hours contracts, or students struggling with debt. I'm not sure that any of that stuff. I'm not sure any of that stuff appears on Nigel Farage's radar.
What would you do if you were elected about Aleppo?
About
Aleppo.
And what is Aleppo?
You're kidding.
To be honest, I actually endorsed and supported Gary Johnson back in 2012 in protest against the same as usual political tactics nowadays against Barack Obama and Mitt Romney. Even though he didn't win, I honestly didn't mind losing, because I realized that I probably should have voted for less with two evils, but that's not my sort of thing. I still appreciate the work of third parties. Gary Johnson this time, fortunately, has not won me over as I would have imagined this year for 2016, with his VP candidate Bill Weld saying he'll vouch for Hillary Clinton and his lack of awareness on foreign policy. Mr. Aleppo? Observe.
Shimon Peres. No, okay, David, I'm talking about living. Go ahead. You got to do this anywhere, any continent. Canada, Mexico, Europe, over there, Asia, South America, Africa, name a foreign leader that you respect.
I guess I'm having an Aleppo moment in the former president
But I'm giving
of Mexico.
you the whole world.
I know.
A Green Party
I do remember her running for 2012 office for the Green Party, but she didn't pique my interest that much during that period. It's fair to say that Jill Stein certainly has impressed me more than before, mainly because of a lot of what she said. Bernie Sanders, who I believe was the most valued candidate running for major office, also agrees with too. They're kind of two peas in a pod. However, some have accused her of being a bit wacky with her anti-vaccination views.
That's what we deserve. What we don't deserve is pandering, irresponsible bullshit passes itself off as campaigning.
Fucked up in here on that bullshit. Nigga, that's that bullshit. Nigga, that's that bullshit.
I've heard about this guy on John Oliver's satirical commentary show. For some reason, I've never heard of him. Well, I should. He's essentially a queer or homosexual zookeeper for lions who talks a great deal about kinky sex and how he's broke as shit.
I am gay. I've had 2 boyfriends most of my life. I currently got legally married. Thank God. It's finally legal in America. I've had some kinky sex. I have tried drugs through the younger years of my life. I am broke as shit. I have a judgment against me from some bitch down there in Florida, but I can tell you I paid a fine with the USJ, and that is nothing but a civil fine.
Anyone who is aware of this Evan McMullin guy in the news, he is running as an independent political candidate. He is once a former Republican working to fight against terrorism and cybercrimes, especially during George Bush years. While he has good intentions and isn't Donald Trump, I won't support McMullin on the basis that he has a neoconservative point of view, which to many people is not very popular, even among some factions on the right. He also is a member of a certain religion, which I won't name, that believes we should ban people from watching films with an R rating. R rating is like the 15 or the 18 certificate. And drinking Pepsi or Coca-Cola, and is okay with allowing young people to marry and have children. Sorry, mate.
A bit of a fight with Evan McMullin, the third-party candidate.
Bring it on. I mean, I think Donald Trump is a very fragile man. I see that because he attacks even people who are vulnerable, because he's intimidated by people. That Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump personify. And I'll tell you, I learned a few things in the CIA, and one of them is how to spot a con man. And I know one when I see one, and he is one.
I'll go back in time and kill baby Hitler with my bare hands before he's even born. And last but not least, of course,
do I need to say anything more about Vermin Supreme? He can't be taken seriously, nor will he ever win to fight against the hypocrites. However, Vermin is where it's at. He's a satirical politician and activist who trolls at events and rallies telling people that they need to brush their teeth 24/7, fight against the zombie apocalypse, and get free ponies. He was once a former libertarian and Republican, but has turned to this kind of ridiculous monster raving loon party activism in an effort to point out how the Democrats and Republicans don't really stay true to their policies. The people who thought Donald Trump is ridiculous and bonkers, wait till you hear about Vermin Supreme. You'll be laughing your fucking ass off, like an episode of 2D TV or Bremer Blood and Fortune.
What I think about it is
Channel
not
4.
terribly germane. Let me say that right now. I'm the guy with the boot on his head, and you're asking me questions like that. Please, sir, have you no shame?
You know what you need. Better schools, better jobs, less crime. How many of you right now work 2 jobs just to have enough money to be broke? That ain't right. If you work 2 jobs and at the end of the week you got just enough money to get your broke ass home, let me hear you say, that ain't right. How many of you have children that they call stupid? Don't be ashamed. It ain't your fault. I asked my niece the other day, what's 4 plus 4? She said 44. It is. But that ain't her fault. That's the school's fault. Now, if your child's school has old-ass books and brand-new metal detectors, let me hear you say, that ain't right. That ain't right.
Pork, caipirinha, beach. Life is good. Well, I think we've learned something today. If you can't be happy eating a moist roast pork sandwich, drinking the caipirinha, with this view in the background in a sea of oily, tight buttocks, you really got a problem. Or you're a Republican.
My fellow Americans.
Hey guys, can you be quiet? Seth and Amy are talking about our country.
They say we're a nation divided. They say we disagree on everything.
That's not true. We agree on a lot.
Like Paul Rudd. Everybody loves Paul Rudd.
I didn't know this was gonna happen. You know what else everyone loves?
Emojis.
No, farmer!
Raccoons.
No, beer.
Beer.
Nothing brings America together like Bud Light.
That's why we're forming the Bud Light Party. Just wait till you see our caucus.
We got the biggest caucus in the country.
Woo-wee! But it's not like too big. Like, you can handle it.
That's right at the top of my agenda. We've shipped millions of jobs overseas, and we have a strange situation because we have a process in Washington where after you've served for a while, you cash in, become a foreign lobbyist, make $30,000 a month, then take a leave, work on presidential campaigns, make sure you got good contacts, and then go back out. Now, if you just want to get down to brass tacks, first thing you ought to do is get all these folks who've got these one-way trade agreements that we've negotiated over the years and say, fellas, we'll take the same deal we gave you. And they'll gridlock right at that point because, for example, we've got international competitors who simply could not unload their cars off the ships if they had to comply. You see, if it was a two-way street, just couldn't do it. We have got to stop sending jobs overseas. To those of you in the audience who are business people, pretty simple. If you're paying $12, $13, $14 an hour for factory workers, and you can move your factory south of the border, pay $1 an hour for labor, hire a young 25, that's assuming you've been in business for a long time, you've got a mature workforce. Pay $1 an hour for your labor, have no health care, that's the most expensive single element, making a car, have no environmental controls, no pollution controls, and no retirement, and you don't care about anything but making money, there will be a giant sucking sound going south.
Grilled tenderloin for fundraiser, $1,000 a plate. Campaign ads filled with half-truths, $10 million. Promises to special interest groups, over $10 billion. Finding out the truth, priceless. There are some things money can't buy. Without Ralph Nader in the presidential debates, the truth will come in last. Find out how you can help. Go to votenader.com. Vote Ralph Nader for president.
What will you give for Al Gore? Do I hear $10 million? 45? Sold. $50 million from Hollywood. Next up, George Bush.
Bush and Gore are for sale to the highest bidder. They'll work for special interest groups, but for you, they'll do nothing.
The two Beltway parties are bought and paid for. We are not. This election day, help us build a third party that puts Americans first.
First off, anyone who tells me that the Purge films all suck and are over-the-top pieces of left-wing propaganda that will cause copycat crimes, half true, half false. The Purge trilogy all follow a premise where annually one night, late March, all crime is legal for 12 hours. Excuse me, 12 hours. It's a very fucked up premise indeed, and all installments, including the final third one, Election Week, showcases an anti-Purge senator running for the presidency, requiring a bodyguard protected on Purge Night, only to run around DC trying to end it, definitely taps into something realistic and primal about the human psyche, while using a plotline derivative of The Warriors or Escape from NY. Its social commentary at its best, brutal graphic violence, and a premise that deals with an election where both candidates seem bloodthirsty and will lead to violence and mayhem after the election results. While reprimanded by critics, London Has Fallen has been considered a conspiratorial warning for the populist right. An impending terror attack spreads throughout London, England after a bad negotiation spruced around Pakistan, leaving an Osama bin Laden leader waging jihad. This is the stuff of nightmares for anyone and every politician, including British PM. They're all dead, except for the US President and his trusty bodyguard, played by Scotsman Gerard Butler, ripping off the premise of The Warriors as they find routes to avoid dying. This is a good film in its own way, better than the first installment, Olympus Has Fallen, but some may find it a bit xenophobic. But I liked it nonetheless, and it has a very similar plotline to 24. Perhaps the most political film on the whole list, Snowden deals with the rise and fall of Edward Snowden, the NSA whistleblower now under asylum in Russia, uncovering the truth about the US government spying on people's personal information and data is surely likely to make some very paranoid faces and create another Occupy Wall Street-like movement of people seeking to get their anonymous activists around and kill the 1%! This film is directed by Oliver Stone, the king behind conspiracy classics and left-wing social justice thrillers like Platoon, JFK, World Trade Center, and Born on the 4th of July. So seeing him make this film, which is something that will appeal to many people from the Bernie Sanders camp, Jill Stein and Gary Johnson, is not surprised. With a premise about a guy sniping out illegal migrants crossing over the US-Mexico border, sure to conjure up images of Donald Trump's "we need to build a wall and have Mexico pay for it" statement. Well, imagine that as an hour 30 long film from the son of director Alfonso Cuarón, Gravity, called Desierto. For the most part, the film has going for a very topical premise at the moment, even if the ending takes the pacifist route. Neither the protagonist or the antagonist die a slow, painful death on sight. Much to my surprise, I haven't heard about La Raza wanting to blow up at Trump rallies though. I'm sure one of them would. While not an overtly political film, Green Room deals with the premise of 4 or 5 millennials being false witnesses to a bloody crime inside a music venue operated by neo-Nazi skinheads. Neo-Nazis, I say? To a certain degree, the film, according to director Jamie Saulnier, was supposed to be a critique about the rise of right-wing extremism and white nationalism pervading through America. Green Room touches on some racial elements with stickies and graffiti, saying 88, anti-racism is code word for anti-white, Confederate flag and light, but it's not explicitly political, but more or less a violent suspense thriller. Similar films came out this year too, like Imperium, which involves Harry Potter, Daniel Radcliffe as an FBI operative going undercover as a skinhead to infiltrate against a bomb plot. And then Germany and Netflix USA released a film all of a sudden about Hitler, brought back from the grave, called Look Who's Back, ist wieder da, about him convincing the Deutsche Volken, the German people, the same kind of anti-immigrant nationalist rhetoric he exploited upon. It's fair to say that this has always been a favorite in my household. Yeah, I know. Mr. Roman Polanski has his name involved when directing the picture, but it's actually a great suspense film about journalism and political conspiracy. Ewan McGregor ghostwrites a memoir on a former Prime Minister modeled off Tony Blair named Pierce Brosnan, only to be hunted down suspiciously for asking questions too privately into his life. I'm not lying. This is a great film mainly due to the mood, acting from both Brosnan and McGregor, and how McGregor's unnamed ghostwriter character is kind of alone. I can sympathize with that. How does this relate to the current election? Well, it involves a subplot about a man willing to assassinate the ex-Prime Minister and the scandals boggling down the PM, which is very familiar to how some people feel about George W. and Hillary Clinton.
Certainly in the Republican Party, you have eliminated the voices, the opinions, and the urgent concerns, healthcare, jobs, wages, housing, a debate about the military, conquest of the world and the credible crisis, student debt, Black Lives Matter, all these issues that are really of burning concern to everyday Americans are out from the get-go. So we're saying, let's open it up to legitimate candidates who are on the ballot for a majority of voters. So it's not like suddenly there's a herd of candidates. It wouldn't even be 11 like in the Republicans.
How do you define legitimate candidates?
If you're on the ballot, you've done the work to get approved by enough states that a majority of voters have you as a choice. So our mantra really is that Americans have a right to vote, and we have a right to know about who we're voting for.
With a plotline similar to the 1970s classics, All the President's Men, and the Oscar Best Picture runner, actually, I take that back, winner, Spotlight, State of Play is an Americanized remake of the British miniseries about a scruffy journalist uncovering a political conspiracy of bad arms deals, sex scandals, and forced suicides related to a senator. While it does sound televisual, it's a drunken Russell Crowe, his kooky mannerisms and political turmoil in the post 9/11 universe that makes it very engaging. In many ways, it ties very much into Hillary Clinton's baggage pertaining to her husband's philandering, secret deals of jihadi Muslims, and recent scandals related to Anthony Weiner and General Petraeus. The International may perhaps be the most unintended. I don't know what to say, but it's, many people might consider it anti-Semitic even though it's not explicit enough, since 3 Days of the Condor and The Parallax View, two 1970s classics. Clive Owen and Naomi Watts are Interpol agents fighting against a large-scale globalist bank conspiracy to kill off an Italian politician in high secret about arms trade. It's a heavy film which unfortunately didn't win too many people at the box office due to misleading advertising, making it look like it's some sort of new installment of the Bourne franchise. It is not a fucking Bourne movie. It is a great thriller with pulpy 1970s elements, and it exposes a lot of the stuff that's been going on right now with what happened with the cooperative bank in the UK and Wells Fargo in the US, as it began involved with dodgy deals to customers and getting tied in with foreign governments.
Bill Foster is an ordinary man.
Where you going?
Perhaps the angriest film I have mentioned so far, Fallen Down, showcases Michael Douglas taking revenge against the world with his paranoia of being overheated inside a car waiting for traffic. He takes out his grievances against Korean shop owners for expensive caffeinated beverages, Mexican gangs, a neo-Nazi, a fast food restaurant, and the police. It's horrifically terrifying because of its realism and how relatable the main character is to some people. I love this film for its pessimistic worldview and a portrayal of a confused LA, Los Angeles, seeing that in this election, homelessness, crime, and unemployment are large issues in the Democratic voting city, surely a point of interest.
Just standing up for my rights as a consumer.
I won't go into detail about these propositions to great lengths because it depends on if you live in the state of California or not. But I do have connections over there. I've done interviews, I've worked there, I've done some studies over there, so let's begin. Nonetheless, it is a very important bastion and location in the US because it holds the highest number of electoral votes. I believe 55. So without further ado, I'm going to let you know what my opinions on the propositions. 51. 51 seeks to secure funding for schools, community colleges within the state. It is important, but it does seem to imply that construction funding is the main impetus for the legislation, when what we have mainly should be focusing on making sure people get job-ready skills for the marketplace. I'm still fine supporting it. Mainly, my main beef with the legislation has to do with it should focus on getting career-ready skills instead of vanity. 52. 52 seeks to impose fees on privatized hospitals to help fund Medi-Cal, which is essentially a blanket fund for low-income patients, children, and retirees. However, imposing fees to hospitals may not necessarily be the best idea, but to instead make sure people get their care at no further expense. 53 makes sure revenue bonds for public projects totaling over $2 billion get statewide approval. This is essentially voter accountability and taxpayers' awareness and seeks to notify the public and legislators about matters like financing for rail or large-scale infrastructure. 54 seeks to make sure that legislation is mentioned on the internet no more than 24 hours before pass. Make sure that voter accountability and taxpayers' expense aren't abused. Good intentions, I support the legislation because of its bipartisanship. 55 seeks to raise taxes on people making over 250,000 United States dollar. It's an effort to help fund for hospitals and protect the environment and the working class. 55 may seem to have good intentions, with income inequality being a definite issue. I don't think raising taxes will always solve the whole problem, because one way or another wealthy people will find ways to escape and wiggle around the system for the benefit of a crony government, something that the Corbynistas and the Bernie bros bitch and complain about. 56 seeks to impose a higher sales tax on tobacco products. Most small businesses and chains are against the policy, but family and health advocates are for it. Personally, if you're going to keep someone and keep telling them smoking is bad, they'll find ways to do it. It's, the nanny state principle. It can backfire. I made a personal choice not to collapse my lungs, but we'll see how it works. 57 seeks to offer parole to non-violent felons. I am supportive for lowering the prison population, as much I can see that some people are a bit crazy around these parts, so let's be cautious, but we need to make sure America is not known for having such a bloody high incarceration rate. 58 issues a mandate for schools to provide strong English language instruction for foreign students. It's not too complicated given California's large multicultural population and the Hispanic population. But it's fair to say that 58's intentions are good, but forcing someone to speak a language doesn't always work well, especially if that person is older than 6 or 7 per se. I should know. I learnt French at age 16 and beyond. I'm still currently learning the grammatical structure and syntax. Oui, c'est vrai. Corporations and labor unions, Prop 59, corporations and labor unions aren't entirely free entities. They're agents for representation. This is what 59 implicates. While I think cronyism has become a big issue in the political campaign of both Trump and Clinton, I don't think the legislation will do much, but will affirm officially by paper that California is having enough of it. Prop 60. What? Something about porn stars need condoms. We'll skip this one because it's too graphic. 61 seeks to make sure corporations aren't responsible for hiking up prescription medication prices. Much of this has been responsible because of the price hikes mentioned in the news from the companies behind EpiPen and Martin Shkreli, or I'll call him Yoga because it's funny. I am more of a fan of alternative and natural medicine and remedies, but I do think companies raising prices at the expense of people's health and education to me seems like a bad idea. 62 will make sure the capital punishment is abolished in favor of life imprisonment without parole. This is a double-edged sword in many ways, because many countries, including the EU with their human rights charter, believe that capital punishment is inhumane, cruel, and unusual. But lately, most methods to kill off the sickest and most demented people in the Western countries have been done via nitrous oxide and lethal injections instead of the electric chair, like 15 to 20 years ago. 64. Oh dear, 64 is a boy that seeks to win over the millennials every fucking where. Legalizing cannabis, pot, weed, Mary Jane, man, what do you call it, statewide? I don't obsess over too much for the herb. I do think that legalizing it will certainly lessen the number of people in prisons. But you will be seeing more of these Tommy Chongs and Seth Rogans up in smoke with some Pineapple Express cars right, and everyone accused being the fascist, man. 65 pretty much entails something about carry-out bags, which sounds like the dumbest policy I've ever heard. I would rather focus fees imposed for programs to extend ending poverty and homelessness, not for some anti-global warming shite. 66 intends to allow the courts to initiate and filter procedures and decisions when it comes to prisoners and the death penalty. This piece of legislation seems fairly complex, and I will admit I am not entirely certain of what it's all about, but it's to help mend some of the things related to the death penalty. 67. Prop 67 seeks to pretty much ban plastic bags. It says ridiculous, the Prop 65 measure. And I have to say to myself, why? Seems like Greenpeace has something to do with all this nonsense.
You could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables.
At the end of the day, we are all seeking for a quick solution to our problems. Poor or rich, it is evident in all humanity. We all have our own vices and violent demands. And often than not, they cannot be filled because of forces beyond our control, or because we don't want to make ourselves look foolish. It's time that the US public take a stand against everything, wish whoever they want, as long as they stay away from me and don't interfere on my turf. Voluntarism is the best source of life there is. It's time that we build zones and areas to cater to every political faction around, so no one feels like they have to blame one another and they keep fighting uphill battles and blame the establishment, the media, the Jews, blame. I've heard it all fucking all. You've heard it all. So have I. For me, I'll just sit around and watch the whole unravel. So enjoy, prunes, and see Donald Trump in this election.
And I am a sausage. Frank on values.
America, fuck yeah! Coming again to save the motherfucking day, yeah, America, fuck yeah! Freedom is the only way, yeah. Terrorists, your game is through. Now you have to answer to America, fuck yeah! So lick my blood and suck on my balls, America, fuck yeah! What you gonna do when we come for you now? It's the dream that we all share. It's the hope for tomorrow. Fuck yeah! McDonald's, fuck yeah! Walmart, fuck yeah! The Gap, fuck yeah! Baseball, fuck yeah! NFL, fuck yeah! Rock and roll, fuck yeah! The internet, fuck yeah! Slavery, fuck yeah! Fuck yeah! Starbucks, fuck yeah! Disney World, fuck yeah! Porno, fuck yeah! Valium, fuck yeah! Reebok, fuck yeah! Big Tits, fuck yeah! Sushi, fuck yeah! Taco Bell, fuck yeah! Rodeo, fuck yeah! Bed Bath & Beyond, Liberty, fuck yeah! White Slips, fuck yeah! The Alamo, fuck yeah! The Band-Aids, fuck yeah! Las Vegas, fuck yeah! Christmas, fuck yeah! Immigrants, fuck yeah! Popeye, fuck yeah! Democrats, fuck yeah! Republicans, sportsmanship, books.
We should go to the moon. I think we maybe should send some politicians up there. But obviously, because it's about one page, if even that long. But I'm willing to challenge any of these gentlemen up here to a 25-mile bike ride any time of the day in the heat of Texas. And you know, that subject has come up, and sometimes in fun, but sometimes not in fun. But, you know, there are laws against age discrimination, so if you push this too much, you better be careful.